Alright guys, this is Lewis here. So in this video I'm going to talk about all of the follow patterns. There's quite a few. There's around 6-7. There is some advanced patterns that we're not going to go into in this video. We're just going to talk about the main ones. But the first thing I want to talk about is that I am starting up working with clients again. I've sort of took a sabbatical of a couple of years to build out a lot of software that I'm going to be showing you today as part of the follow video. But yeah, if you are interested in becoming a client, there's loads of different options on here. Where we just want an HTMA, a more in-depth pattern, a professional pattern, a call, messaging, etc. This is actually being built on our new platform called HDMA Pro. The idea of HDMA Pro really is to give clients a way better experience when it comes to hair analysis. One of the challenges that many practitioners have is because it's such a unique practice. Sometimes it's challenging to know who's doing what, and tracking people and giving people information. So over the coming months, weeks, this platform is going to get way better. At the moment, you'll be able to log in and sort of view your hair analysis, view your previous intake forms. You can send messages, all that jazz. So anyway, the main thing we want to talk about today is follows. So let's go ahead. So what I've done is I have made quite a few different follow scenarios on our application hairanalysis.report. If you're a practitioner, it's a super helpful application to use. It gives very highly detailed reports. If you are a client, we do recommend working with a practitioner, but I am aware of how terrible some of the reports are, so I do allow it to be used by individuals with disclaimers, but it's always good to obviously work with a practitioner. But some of the reports are absolutely terrible. Alright, so first one, we've got a regular follow pattern. So a regular follow pattern is when the ideal levels are below ideal. So in this example, below 40, below 6, below 25 and below 10 on calcium, magnesium, sodium and potassium. You have got to use an ARL test. Our app adds the ideal values in there. If you're using the trace elements test, it's pretty much impossible to see a follow pattern. But yeah, our graphs, we will convert trace elements into graphs that are actually readable on the application. So this is an initial test, so we can only see one bar here. So this is actually quite common. A follow pattern is, Dr. Wilson calls it sort of an end-of-life pattern. We don't really want to call it that. It's not an end-of-life pattern. The only reason why he calls it that is because when people do get to the end of their lives, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc., the body generally goes into this pattern. But yeah, younger people are getting it. Even babies are getting it. And you 100% can get out of the pattern. Usually when people are in a follow pattern, especially on an initial test, they will generally feel pretty bad, pretty burnt out, stressed. They might be out of touch with their stress levels and their fatigue, especially if the potassium is sort of like 4 or below. This is because the individual can be in what's called sympathetic dominance. So that is when the body's overusing the fight or flight response. So an individual can feel quite out of sorts, or they're not too in touch with their true fatigue. It's only when they actually start something like the mineral balancing program will they actually probably remove a lot of the stimulants that are keeping them in follows, and they will probably feel more tired. But that's just because they've removed all of the stimulants from their lifestyle, and they're actually experiencing the true exhaustion underneath. For some people that is quite overwhelming. It happened to me. I was actually in 3 lows, but I was still burnt out, and yeah, the exhaustion that I experienced was absolutely insane. I had to educate myself and realise that this is actually normal, and that by removing the stimulants that was keeping me going, whether it be from over-exercising, cigarette smoking, sugar, some people are really angry all the time, which is a stimulant. Yeah, that can keep you unaware of how actually tired you are, even if you do feel tired. So yeah, that is something to be aware of. You might actually feel more exhausted when you do a mineral balancing program, especially in 4 lows, and that's actually a really good sign. The trick really to get out of 4 lows is a little bit different to other patterns. Dr. X spent years and years trying to figure out how to get someone out of a 4 low pattern. The way to do it really is not to give many stimulants, so you've got to be a little bit careful, because there are other hair analysis practitioners out there who will give people things like B vitamins in a 4 low pattern, which is sort of the last thing you want to do. The way to get out of a 4 low pattern is basically to put the adrenals and the thyroid gland to bed. And once that happens, the body kind of restarts itself after a while and comes out of a 4 low pattern, and that's when we can actually start giving people more stimulatory minerals and adrenal support, etc., etc. But a lot of people mistakenly, realise that this is a serious adrenal issue, but they'll start giving people adrenal glandulars and stimulants, and actually that's not the way of getting people out of 4 lows. It can make them feel much worse. So if you're on a 4 low pattern, you will be given things like extra calcium, extra magnesium. This is something that calms down the body. You see the calcium magnesium levels here is obviously low. Calcium magnesium basically acts like a buffering system. It kind of keeps a lid on things. You can think about it like an umbrella. So one of the key analogies that we talk about when someone's in a 4 low pattern is it's like being outside in the storm without a shelter. The shelter is the calcium and magnesium. It's not there basically. The roof isn't on the building. So it can feel quite overwhelming that there isn't no shelter, there isn't no umbrella, and you've obviously got a burnt out adrenal glands and a very low potassium level, which has a lot to do with the fight or flight response, especially if it's super low. So as you can imagine, it can get quite chaotic because of the low sodium and low potassium. And then you haven't got any shelter, which is the calcium magnesium, to sort of keep a lid on things, to keep things calm. So usually when people start a 4 lows supplementation program, they feel way better. They usually feel much calmer. It feels like a sort of a weight's lifted off the shoulders. It does feel like you've kind of come out the storm a little bit and gone into sort of more of a warm environment. But that's really when the body needs to sort of curl up next to the fire and sort of rest and sleep it off, and that can be quite a traumatic or more of a shock to an individual, because they're just not used to just that tiredness, if that makes sense. But that's generally usually what happens. So on our hair analysis application, you will get a section on 4 lows. It's a priority section, so it's a priority and focus point, and it will talk about all of the things relating to 4 lows. At times an attitude or a lifestyle pattern. In some cases of 4 lows on a first hair analysis is related to lifestyle. These factors include working too much or too hard, being too hard on oneself or others, being in an oppressed or very stressful situation of some kind, or a compulsive or obsessive tendencies that wear out the body. Attitudes that could drive a person into 4 lows and keep one there include anger, intense fear, intense guilt, or some other emotion that wears down and depletes the body. So all in all, it's a depletion pattern. All right, moving on to the next test. We have got. All right, so if you look at the previous test, which is in light blue, this individual was in a 4 low pattern, and the most recent test in dark blue, it's actually dropped. Everything's dropped. So we actually call this pattern digging deeper. It's not necessarily a bad pattern at all. It's generally seen as a kind of a good pattern, really. So 4 lows on a retest, digging deeper pattern, and there's a little tick icon there. You might think to yourself, why is there a tick icon when all of the minerals have actually reduced? Well, the reason being is similar to what I was saying earlier. The way to get out of 4 lows is actually to rest as much as possible. You actually kind of go into the body, in a sense, and experience all of the exhaustion and all of the tiredness. And going through that rest is what actually brings you out of it. A good way of thinking about it is like a marathon runner. So let's say you come across a marathon runner that was constantly doing marathons, and they were saying to you, I don't feel good, what is the solution? Well, you'd actually say to them, the solution isn't to take something more stimulatory to keep you going. The solution is actually stop and to get in bed. So there's this dip, there's this drop, this is generally what happens. So if a person is genuinely following the program well and the minerals drop on a retest, we actually see that as a good thing. Obviously, if a person's not following the program well, then you kind of have to read the hair analysis differently, because they might actually be more stressed and more tired. But generally, if people are doing retests, they're generally following the program to a degree, so it is accurate. Alright, moving on to the next one. Let's see what we've got. Alright, so the individual was in a retest previously because of the light blue is all below ideal. And the person has actually come out of a follow pattern. They've come out of a follow pattern into slow oxidation, which is a nice pattern to be in. So on the pattern we can see, let's see, we've got an out of follows pattern, a joy pattern, a big green tick. You've come out of follows, you've successfully navigated through a deep healing and retracing process. So basically, you know, what I was saying before is, after a while, if you just give the body enough rest, if you give it enough time, the body will naturally come out of follows. It's counterintuitive because we're kind of doing things to rest the body more, keep the body more down, giving a person some things that are not stimulatory, and then, you know, all of a sudden it kind of wakes up. That's why it was so confusing for Dr. Eck and Dr. Wilson when they was exploring follows and figuring how to get someone out of it, because it's kind of counterintuitive. Do you know what I mean? Like, actually, you know, the worst pattern is not giving people stimulatory things, it's actually resting, and they'll generally come out of it into you know, into slow oxidation, or they might come out into fast oxidation. So just keep a note of the age here. The age is 31. That's going to be important in a minute. So as we can see in the light blue in 4 lows, and the sodium and potassium have come up quite a lot. So this is someone who has come out of 4 lows, but they've actually come out of 4 lows into fast oxidation. So instead of the little sort of joy pattern that we had on the previous test, alright, so I've got a nice green joy pattern, come out of 4 lows. You know, why are we not seeing that here? Well, the reason being is that an adult, when they actually come out of 4 lows into fast oxidation, the experience of hundreds of thousands of hair analysis patterns, tests, and, you know, time, the experience is, if an adult comes out of 4 lows into fast oxidation, they will generally go back into a 4 low pattern. I don't know all the ins and outs and the reasons why, that's just a fact. So if you do see a client, or you do come out of 4 lows into fast oxidation, there's a very, very high likelihood that you will actually go into 4 lows again. This is just something the body needs to do in order to readjust itself and heal itself. You might come out of 4 lows and go into fast oxidation, and then back into 4 lows, and then into fast oxidation. You know, I've seen some people do that like 3 or 4 times before the body will actually resolve itself and come out of 4 lows into sort of slow oxidation, and that's where it'll stay. It's also important to note that if you do come out of 4 lows into slow oxidation, we will put you on a slow oxidation program, because we do want to try and keep people out of 4 lows. If we find that the body has done what it needs to do, it's done the resting, it's done the rejuvenation, then we do want to give minerals that are going to try and keep a person out of 4 lows. Alright, so yeah, this is the fast oxidation one. Oh no, this is... Alright, so this is the exact same, right? Let's see. Yeah, we've got the exact same. So what's going off here? So if you note here, the age is actually 4. On the previous one, the age is 31. So why is this important? Alright, so in this one we've got a green joy pattern, but in this one we had a warning pattern. So the reason is that children should be fast oxidizers. Adults should generally be slow oxidizers. if adults have been doing the program for a long time, they can go into fast oxidation or mild fast oxidation with a an ideal NAK ratio or an elevated NAK ratio, and we call them healthy fast oxidizers. That is quite common for someone who's been on the program for a long time. So if a child's in follows and they go into fast oxidation, this is actually a good sign, because the child should actually be in fast oxidation. The children should be in fast oxidation from birth. It's difficult to sort of set an exact time when they end up not being in fast oxidation, but if definitely from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then that's often where they start moving into a different pattern, maybe slow oxidation, but there isn't sort of a set time. But a 4-year-old should definitely be in fast oxidation. So this is a joy pattern on a children's test, and one of the good things about how our hair analysis report is that some of these things won't get picked up for whatever reason. The main reason is just that there's hundreds of these to remember, so it sort of cuts out any sort of human error. Alright, so I think we may have got alright, so this is probably one of the most confusing things for an individual when they're doing a hair test. So let's see what we've got. So we've got the previous test is actually not in a follows because the calcium magnesium is above ideal, but the new test, the dark blue, is in follows. So what do we think about this one? Alright, so let's have a look down here. Oh wow, we've got a joy pattern and a celebration pattern. So why is this? So yeah, basically if you are in if you're on a retest and you've gone into follows from not being in follows, we actually call that a celebration pattern. So why is this? Well, the reason being is that the body is often quite stressed, quite worn out, and one of the things it will have to do, or one of the things it usually does while it's doing the mineral balancing program, while it's healing, is it will actually go into a follow pattern, usually a retracement pattern. Usually the person's been in it from the past, but it'll go into a follows pattern for deep healing and rejuvenation. Now, Dr. Wilson says that this doesn't actually happen unless an individual is on a mineral balancing program. So whenever I see an individual who's gone into follows from not being in follows, I actually see that as an amazing thing, because it's a sign to me that one, they're doing the healing program extremely well, which is what we want, and two, the body has now decided to basically go into the garage and have everything changed, the nuts, the bolts, the oil, everything's kind of a good analogy to tell people. The thing is that when you go into follows, because your supplement regime will have changed, it can feel really bad actually. It's quite, for some people it's quite scary. It was for me when I first sort of went into follows on a retest. I was like, because I was on the wrong supplement regime, I went straight into the feeling of being outside without a shelter, very difficult to sleep. I was freaking out. And as soon as I got put on the follow program, which sort of put a lid on things, I felt way calmer. In fact, I was in follows a few years ago, and I was in follows for like 2 years, 3 years. I actually quite enjoyed it. It was quite a nice thing to go in, especially when you've been doing the program for a while and it's on a retest, because the supplements make you feel calm. You're calm. You might not have an immense amount of energy, but you've just got this sort of like chilled vibe about you, which is super nice. So yeah, this is one thing to really understand, is that if you do go into follows on a retest, we do actually call that a celebration pattern. It's actually a fantastic sign. Now we've got an interesting thing down here. So the age on this test is 31. So something's come up here which is important to talk about. So if an individual goes into a follows program and is around the age of 26 to 34, however, this can also happen at any time, especially when a person is on the program, This could be a sign that the individual is processing issues or conflicts involving parents. This can be quite complex, however a person tends to move through the process quite easily. This often happens around the age of the Saturn return, an astrological concept that tends to occur between the ages of 27 and 30. However, it can be at any time. If an individual has not followed a deep healing program, this may happen much later in life when they start the program. So I actually added this in, and it's quite accurate. If your client is between the ages of 26 and 34, or if you're in that and you've gone in to follow those on retest, for some reason it's because the body is going back and dealing with some parental issues. Why is this? Well, it's something I'm not going to go into too much on this particular video, but our life is sort of set out in sort of sections. So the first section is sort of parental love and getting love from parents, and then the second one is getting love from fun and friends and sort of extended family, and then the third one is getting love from peers, and then the fourth one, which is in your 20s, is self-love. So you're sort of receiving love in your early years, and then after your 20s and your 30s, that's when you start giving love. So you start giving love to a relationship, giving love to a dependent, a child, giving love to the community, giving love to the world. So it's a really important sort of crux point. And if you've not resolved old stuff, usually parental stuff, you're going to find it really difficult to move into the next stages of life. So the body goes through this process called a Saturn return, and it's definitely really prominent when you're doing the mineral balancing program. And it's an amazing thing, really. That I think Dr. Wilson discovered this, is that people do tend to go into a 4-law pattern to resolve conflicts around parents. It's usually conflicts around attachment issues. So if you want to look at various, I'm just seeing if I've got anything here, various issues around attachment. There's a cool book called Attached. I do have it somewhere. We've got a book here called Boundaries. That's a similar one. But basically people have attachment issues. So some people are like anxiously attached. Here we are. And some people are avoidant attachment. So a really good book to read is Attached, and it'll make you figure out whether you are anxiously attached or avoidantly attached. You need to heal them things. It's usually from parents, and I wish I could tell you how that gets healed, but from my experience, God works in weird and wonderful ways in this period, and you'll end up going through some just mind-blowing situations, and it's actually to heal all the past issues. Again, if you do feel like it's something you're going through, then go to hdmapro.com/Lewis Moon. You might want to book in for a call, and we can have a chat about it over the phone. But yeah, really amazing pattern. Alright, so the final one we're going to talk about, so in this one we're in a 4-law pattern, but if you also notice we've got a bowl pattern. So a bowl pattern looks like a bowl basically. So whenever someone's in a bowl pattern and they are in a 4-law pattern, we call that stuck in a hard place. So this pattern is where a person is in a 4 laws, and also a bowl pattern. This is a sign that a person is feeling particularly stuck and depleted. Life can often feel very hard for these people, and there is usually some confusion. The good news is that people generally come out of this pattern fairly quickly when following a thorough healing program, because the individual not only feels hope that their situation can change, getting out of a bowl/feeling stuck, but they are also given the correct supplementation and lifestyle changes to resolve a 4-law pattern. Alright, so there are some more advanced patterns. So we do have an advanced report coming out on the hair test on the hairanalysis.report soon. These patterns are patterns that are not talked about mainstream. They are much deeper. They're sort of research patterns, etc. So I'm not going to go into them too much. But that's everything. And yeah, if you're interested in getting hair analysis, then check out htmapro.com/LewisMoon, all one word, and I'm sure we can help you out. Thanks for watching. Speak to you.